Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you another Magic the Gathering video. Today we're exploring more of the world building going on with Kaldheim. What makes this plane unique from others throughout the multiverse, and in this video, we'll be learning about the Kaldheim gods. I know there's a lot of god tribal brewers and just lovers of the fantasy divinity out there, so consider this video perfect for you guys. Also, as a side note, please stop playing with those decks. My playgroup specifically, I'm talking to you guys. Just don't anymore, please. Anyway, Kaldheim is yet another plane that has its own pantheon of gods, much like the planes of Theros and Amonkhet, but how are the divine on Kaldheim any different? What makes them stand out as some of the most unique gods in MTG? Let's learn the history of the gods on Kaldheim and a little bit more about the personalities and typings of each of the gods that are currently available in Kaldheim. Gods of Kaldheim are actually really cool, but that's despite their absence for the most part in the set's official story and promotional material. Unlike Theros and Amonkhet, for example, where the gods were so front and center with, well, basically everything involving those blocks, Kaldheim's gods are a little bit more subtle, leading many to forget that this plane has gods at all. Let's go ahead and learn why that is, and that all comes down to how they chose to represent and design Kaldheim from the bottom up. The gods of Kaldheim are first and foremost an ever-changing and fluid pantheon, and most of the plane recognizes this. They're sort of the middle ground between what appear to be constants, like the gods on Amonkhet, and the very, very slow changing gods of Theros. On Theros, the gods can fall, and new gods can take their place, but this happens over such a vast amount of time that the mortals just believe that every god has been there essentially forever. Only through the god's own admissions do we know otherwise, and this is the weird middle ground in which the Kaldheim gods lay. For Kaldheim, the current pantheon of gods, known as the Skodi, actually usurped the godly thrones of beings who existed before them, a pantheon known as the Aenir. We know this from legends passed down by the clans of wood and shadow elves on Kaldheim, who are long-distant relatives to the once powerful Aenir. We don't know why, but these much more human-looking gods, the Skodi, defeated the Aenir with the help of some dwarven-made weapons capable of cutting through any material, even the flesh of a god. With these powerful tools, Halvar, the god of battle, cleaved through the entire divine elvish race, cutting them into two factions, the wood and shadow elves, and severing their ties to godhood. That race fell from divinity to Skemfar, thus the death of a pantheon and the birth of a new mortal race. However, 7 leaders of the Aenir lived, and the Skodi sealed them away across the realms, 7 in total, locked within powerful trees throughout Kaldheim. Thus was the ancient saga, Binding of the Old Gods. As a result of this, history, the races of elves on Kaldheim do not look towards the gods with respect or admiration, but rather disdain and distrust. For it were the Skodi who robbed them of their divine heritage and cursed them to the realm of mortals. But it was also the Skodi who imprisoned the great cosmos serpent Koma, who the elves and the Aenir once revered, which is a really strange story in and of itself. So that's basically the history of the gods on Kaldheim, but it begs the question, how are gods created on this plane? Obviously the Aenir were here before, but these new upstarts, the Skodi, appear to usurp them. So that means they weren't here at the origins of Kaldheim, they must have been created, right? This again points to a major difference between the Aenir and the Skodi, where they derive their divine power from. Gods are not solely born on Kaldheim, they're made from various sources of power and lifted to godhood. It's believed that the ancient Aenir had a spiritual connection with that same serpent, Koma, which granted them their immortality and strength, while the inquisitive Skodi found a different font of power, the Cosmos Elixir. The World Tree of Kaldheim is a source of unimaginable mana. It's the conduit that keeps the plane stable and flowing with magical potential. Anything from this World Tree is considered a gift, containing untold properties, but always undoubtedly powerful, even right down to its sap. The Skodi, whoever they were before their ascension, discovered this sap and experimented with its magic. Eventually, one discovered how to transform this sap into an elixir containing all the magics of the World Tree itself, binding the drinker to this cosmic entity in its entirety. The result was godhood. Thus was born the era of the Skodi. Even now, this Cosmos Elixir must be consumed ever so often for the Skodi to keep their powers and ward off age. It's what gives them their immortality, and without it, they could fall once again to the mortal realms. Now that we know the history of the Kaldheim gods, let's learn more about the individuals who make up this divine family. Ulron is the Allfather of the Kaldheim pantheon, the daddy figure, figuratively and to some more literally. He's known as the god of wisdom, having claimed more knowledge than any single being in Kaldheim's history, including the Aenir. He obtained this knowledge through countless battles with the cosmos monsters, beasts like Koma, who were birthed in the creation of Kaldheim and contain within it all the secrets of the plane's past, present, and future. So Ulron isn't just some kindly old bookworm, he's also an accomplished warrior, as cosmos monsters are certainly some of the most dangerous beasts found throughout the multiverse. Though he has learned much, he has not yet conquered the unknown of Kaldheim. So Ulron continues to not only protect this world, but forever seeks knowledge about it. Rydain is the god of justice. She is forever youthful, arrogant, and fanatical. Her convictions are stone. Once she's made up her mind on anything, she'll never waver from that point of view, so clearly, she doesn't really understand differing perspectives. Luckily, Rydain isn't some evil god. Her pursuits, while zealous, are always for justice and fairness, but strictly her interpretation of it. Fairness to Rydain is paying the price of anything not honorable by either penance or blood. Whatever was taken must be given back in turn, a real eye for an eye sense of the world. Despite having wings much like the Valkyrie of Kaldheim, Rydain is more revered with the human clans of Bredagard. Brave, honorable, but also prone to abuses of power. Many a human clans have pleaded with Rydain of plights with their neighbors, and she'll often act as an arbiter should she agree with your side. Kozuma is possibly the strangest of the Skodi because she is unlike any other god of Kaldheim, ever. Kozuma was not some mortal woman who drank of the Cosmos Elixir to become a god, but rather, she was originally a cosmos monster who sort of stumbled into divinity. Kozuma was born a cosmos monster that appeared as a dolphin, one of gigantic size that swam not in an ocean, but the current of the cosmos that spread between the various realms of Kaldheim. One day, she swam to the Gods realm, a place that exists outside of the 10 known realms of Kaldheim. Once there, she appeared in human form and drank of the Cosmos Elixir, allowing her to remain in said form as a divine figure. Thus, Kozuma is the only known cosmos monster to become a god. Just think of what would happen if Koma drank the Cosmos Elixir. Ugh. Still, her wild nature stayed true, and Kozuma never liked to stay within God's realm for very long, hearing the call of the seas that were her home for countless years. She regularly leaves, taking the form of a dolphin again so she can go unseen for several years before returning. No matter how long she stays out in the wilds, the other gods always welcome her back, because Kozuma is the wife of Ulron and mother to many of the other gods in the Pantheon. So yeah, Ulron is with a dolphin. Yep. As strange as this character is, Kozuma happens to be one of the very few gods to make it into the main storyline of Kaldheim. She appears in Chapter 5, jumping out as a dolphin to join Kaya in the fight to end the Doomscar. She says she was sent by her husband, Ulron, to aid the Planeswalker. Halvar, the god of battle, is another character we see, albeit briefly, in the main story of Kaldheim. He's given the Sword of the Realms, originally crafted for his use, and manages to close the open Doomscar with it. Outside of that, Halvar is the adopted son of Ulron, who found him as a small child abandoned and set to die in the nest of a giant eagle. Ulron rescued him, but couldn't raise him as the god was still out slaying cosmos monsters. He's not really a stay-at-home dad. And now that I think of it, I wonder what his wife, a former cosmos monster, thinks about her husband's, monster slaying. Anyway, Ulron left Halvar to be raised by a dwarven king for 20 years, giving Halvar a unique perspective of his soon-to-be divinity, living as a mortal with some of the most noble races in Kaldheim and building powerful lifelong friendships there. As such, Halvar speaks with a quiet confidence, strong, skilled, but humble and honor-bound. He's selfless, stalwart, and unwavering, being described as the most sensible person in any room. He also acts as the Skodi's personal bodyguards when the gods are out observing the mortal realms. Azika is probably the most influential force in all the Kaldheim Pantheon because it is Azika who actually crafts the Cosmos Elixir, which grants them their godly powers and immortality. Ulron once used runic magic long ago in order to connect with the World Tree, to understand its secrets. Those also affected by this spell were Azika and her sister, Turgrid. In Azika's case, she connected with the World Tree to a degree unmatched by anyone, including the other gods. This connection led her to the creation of the Cosmos Elixir, which she now protects at all costs, as she's the only one who can ever know how to craft this brew. Because of her unusually strong connection with the World Tree and its powerful secrets, Azika has secluded herself from most of the other gods, sealing herself within an unknown area to protect the World Tree's balance. She also has a deep connection with each of Kaldheim's realms, having personally explored each of them in order to learn how they uniquely connect back to the World Tree. Azika also happens to be friends with a cosmos monster, the tiny squirrel Toski, who climbs up and down the branches of the World Tree. Yorn is the god of winter, a prominent role on a plane whose winters can be quite harsh and biting. Yorn is much like Azika, as he prefers the company of the wilds opposed to bustling human towns or even the table of the gods. He's an excellent tracker, spending countless years out in the forest observing and learning about, well, whatever he wants. Yorn is the brother of Ulron, and their connection is nearly unmatched. While Yorn does enjoy his treks in the wilderness, he'll always drop his current task if the other gods, especially Ulron, are in need of him. Because of his unique tracking ability, Ulron often requests Yorn to join him on cosmos monster hunts, as only Yorn knows the quickest and safest routes between the realms and can find tracks of these great beasts. And yes, he can talk to animals and control the weather, thus the adorable little critters on his card art. Volky, the god of lies, it's Tybalt in disguise, that's it. Okay, yes, this was a real god before Tybalt co-opted his visage, at least for about the 2 minutes we saw in Kaldheim's story. It's unknown how Volky became a god originally, but it likely had something to do with him tricking someone. He's vain, selfish, pulling pranks on the other gods to hilarious effect, at least if you're not the one being pranked. Despite this though, Volky can be talked to and even reasoned with, lending a hand if truly needed. Only issue is that he's fooled so many of the other gods so many times, most don't even bother asking Volky for help. What the gods of Kaldheim don't currently know is that the real Volky has since been imprisoned in Karfell, the realm of the dead, by Tybalt. The Planeswalker managed to trick the god of lies and offered him to the spectral king of Karfell as a prisoner. Now locked beneath the deepest, darkest glacier, there's no telling when or if the true trickster god will ever return. Turgrid, sister of Azika, is the god of fright, but not because she instills fear in others, but because she has conquered her own constant nightmare. As a young child of 4, a dark magical force overtook Turgrid and transformed her own shadow into a monster, one that was always bound to her. The first time the shadow appeared, it tried to kill the young Turgrid, but the girl's will was so strong that she managed to defend herself from this shadow for hours, until that shadow was again under her control. Now, Turgrid can't control her shadow, but it respects the god's power, and only sometimes tries to strangle her. Turgrid does her best to try to ignore the monster always behind her, even becoming angry with others who point it out. This all goes to this god's daily struggle. Egon, the god of death, is the Grim Reaper of Kaldheim. He's in fact the oldest of the current Skodi, only he doesn't appear it. Age for Egon works on the Benjamin Button rules, meaning he ages backwards. Once a withered old man, over the centuries Egon now appears as a sprightly teenager, much to Egon's dismay. His youthful appearance means the other gods sometimes forget Egon's maturity, considering he's nothing more than a mere child, which really gets under Egon's skin. Beyond that, Egon hasn't ever had the most pleasant of personalities. He's overly negative and pessimistic, constantly going on about the impending fall of the Skodi or the doom of Kaldheim. Now mind you, he doesn't have any means to predict the future, he just thinks the end is always just around the corner. So yeah, he's not the life of the party. Despite this, the Skodi owe a lot to Egon, as it was his bargain with Narfi, the king of Karfell, realm of the dead, that turned the tide in the war against the ancient Aenir gods. Egon took control of an army of Draugr and spirits which he used in the war with the old gods, giving the Skodi the upper hand. Egon enjoyed this position so much that he began to make Karfell and Istfell, the realms of the various dead on Kaldheim, his home away from home. He now proclaims himself the Lord High Ruler of the lands of Istfell and the dead of all realms, a title the other gods never really wanted to begin with. Toroff, the god of fury, is a true fan of sagas, not in his deck so much, but in crafting his own. He's obsessed with achieving impossible feats of physical prowess. He's a natural risk taker, and loves a good challenge. He cares not for war, because war is easy, anyone can be a brilliant warrior. Toroff more concerns himself with doing what is perceived as impossible, creating more and more outlandish, but very true stories about himself. Toroff has saga songs about some of his greatest achievements, such as plucking a hair from the largest frost giant in all of Surtland, carving his name into the shell of the chasm beast that slumbers in the deepest ocean of the realms, and causing a doomscar with just the swing of his mighty hammer. All of this made possible as Toroff is the eldest son of Ulron and Kozuma, though his father believes Toroff is wasting his outstanding talents on trivial pursuits. Kolvori, god of kinship, is the closest the Kaldheim pantheon comes to a nature god. She's talkative to a fault, able to find the beauty in almost anything she sees in nature and describe it almost obsessively. She loves a good poem, believing Kaldheim and all of its realms brings something close to perfection worthy of praise and song. Kolvori is the youngest offspring of Ulron and Kozuma, and often finds herself playing a mediator role for her tumultuous family. The Skodi of Kaldheim, while most consider themselves family, are in a constant flux and struggle of personal interest. Egos, arrogance, glory all seem to get in the way as competing perspectives, and stubbornness drives an ever-growing wedge between the family of gods. Egon, the god of death, believes this division will kill the Skodi, and Kolvori begrudgingly agrees. So, she finds herself trying to sew together frayed kinship, compiling a long list of sagas relating to her family, and mediating any dispute. Kolvori truly loves her family, and their constant infighting hurts her deeply. And finally, the middle child of the Pantheon, Berrgy, god of storytelling. Berrgy is the middle child of Ulron and Kozuma, and one of the more abstract gods found on Kaldheim. There's no debate that at a party, the god you'd most want to see show up is Berrgy. Berrgy-licious. She calls herself the envoy of the gods and has declared it her mission to spread the fortune of the gods across the mortal realms of Kaldheim. And what that actually is an excuse to party, feast, and boast as much as she pleases. Berrgy is hedonistic and gluttonous, enjoying everything there is about the party culture on Kaldheim. That means pigs and ale. Much like her older brother, Toroff, Berrgy loves to gloat of her accomplishments, even taking credit for things that have been done, well, adjacent to her. She's not above taking one of her older brother's feats and boasting them as her own, much to the dismay of Toroff, who finds this annoying. Berrgy even went as far as to hire a dwarven scout to follow Toroff around recording his feats, just so she had something new to brag about at the next party. While most around her know her stories are likely BS, they're usually having way too much fun to care. And that's all the gods and their history on Kaldheim, but there's still one more thing I wanted to discuss before ending this video. What exactly sets them apart from other gods throughout the multiverse of MTG? One of the biggest differences unique to the Kaldheim gods, which players picked on immediately, is their ability to transform into certain objects or enchantments closely associated with their divine purpose. While many gods throughout the multiverse are associated with artifacts and weapons, such as the godly weapons in the Theros pantheon, those on Kaldheim are so deeply connected that a part of their essence lives within these artifacts. Toroff's hammer that caused a doomscar with its swing, Turgrid's lantern that wards back the power of her deadly shadow, Berrgy's horn which she can chug ale from? They're all deeply connected to their associated gods, and the gods don't so much become these artifacts, as they're just an extension of their essence. Another major difference is the lack of the keyword indestructible for the Kaldheim gods. Yes, the Kaldheim gods are destructible, which differs from what we've grown accustomed to with other gods throughout the years. And this speaks to the inspiration for Kaldheim as a whole. Based on Norse mythology, the gods were decidedly immortal beings, but still could succumb to mortal wounds. This adds a little bit more risk and danger when the gods go out to the mortal realms and decide to fight. The gods of Kaldheim work the same way. They are immortal so long as they drink from the Cosmos Elixir, but they could still very much die in combat, though their added power does make them truly formidable opponents. But yeah, if you were curious as to why the Kaldheim gods don't have Indestructible, it's just because, for the most part, they're mortals who ascended to godhood, not true like all-powerful, omnipotent gods. And that, you guys, is gonna wrap up what we know about the gods on Kaldheim, their history, and their personalities. What I want to know from you is, who is your favorite god? Every time we get this creature type in a set, we can all find one or more that we really identify with. So go ahead and let me know what yours is in the comment section below. I will say I'm excited to see how this pantheon changes over time and if we'll ever see them again. We saw so much change go on with the Theros gods over the years, and Amonkhet's gods all but went extinct over the time of that story, and even some eventually just being risen as god zombies in War of the Spark. So who really knows what's going to happen to the gods of Kaldheim? Maybe there's this brewing conflict between the Skodi and their currently trapped Aenir. It's really anyone's guess. Anyway guys, I just wanted to take a moment to say thanks so much for watching, and if you enjoyed the content, make sure you show your support by leaving it a like, subscribing, and ticking that notification bell. You can also support us over on Patreon, where you get videos early, sign cards monthly, and your name at the end of each of my videos. Go ahead and check that link in the description below and consider supporting us there. It really goes a long way. And as always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!